This is Brandon. He coaches NFL players, professional boxers, fighters, as well as entrepreneurs. A UFC fighter literally just gave him a shout out on Joe Rogan.
I want to hear more about this mental training.
Brandon Epstein.
But this isn't his only shout out. Brandon's testimonials page is filled with dozens of videos of professional athletes sharing how helpful he's been to their success. But the crazy part about Brandon is how he shares these simple techniques that anybody else can start using today.
That question of like, what does it feel like to be you right now? It's like, I'd never asked myself that. And the moment I did, it actually gave me a lot of empowerment because I realized that if I could become aware of what it was like to be me right now, it gave me an opportunity to move into something more empowering, something that might be more enjoyable.
In this episode, you'll learn a simple question that reconnects you with your clarity in under 10 seconds, how to use your energy or even fear or shame as fuel, and the mental shifts that has helped professional athletes win, and how you could try the same techniques yourself. Let's dive in. All right, Brandon, you're a mental performance coach for some of the top athletes in the world, but I first want to start with a question from your book, one that I've been asking myself multiple times a day this last week, and I got it from your recommendation. And the question is, what does it feel like to be me in this moment? And it's so simple, but it's really profound. I'm curious, where does this come from, and how have you used this tool?
Yeah. And I'll invite people who are listening to this right now to actually ask themselves, maybe even pause this and say, what's it feel like to be me right now? And resist the urge of thinking about how you feel and instead just feel how you feel. Because most of us are coming up with a story to justify our feelings. And the real experience of being you is actually how it feels to be you, not a mental story which could influence how you feel. But this question is the basis for all mindfulness, right? When you look at every practice around meditation, mindfulness, like this is the question, is coming back to the present moment, which is the only thing that's ever real. It's always right now. And so your experience of life is always about how it feels to be you right now, right? And I think there's so much motivation porn that's been fed to us. We're just getting away from it a little bit now, where it's like, forget your feelings, right? Just put your head down, do the work. It's like, well, what's the point, right? Because if you're just constantly achieving things and you never get to the feeling that you want, what's the point? So it's always good to just be aware of what it's like to be you right now. And if you don't feel good, like not judging it, not making it wrong, but just having the awareness of it allows you to navigate to something better, because what you can't accept won't change. And if you're unconsciously resisting what it feels like to be you right now and just trying to force forward mentally, what you're resisting will persist. So you're going to be stuck in that feeling, and it's going to be automatic and it's going to be unavoidable. So that's why I always start with this feeling. And for me, you asked like where I came up with this. We'll get into this, I'm sure, later on. But when I was 18 years old, I discovered the world of meditation, mental performance, started going down the path of spirituality. And I was lucky enough to run into a guy who I call Sensei Clay. And this man brought me down this rabbit hole. And he started to introduce me to these types of questions around mindfulness. Of actually, at the time, nobody was talking about mental health. So it's like, that question of like, what does it feel like to be you right now? It's like, I'd never asked myself that. And the moment I did, it actually gave me a lot of empowerment because I realized that if I could become aware of what it was like to be me right now, it gave me an opportunity to move into something more empowering, something that might be more enjoyable.
Amazing. And we're going to touch on a lot of examples. I'll use myself as examples as well throughout this. And that's one of the things that really resonated with your book is you put yourself into that book from chapter 1 of a lot of vulnerable things that you shared from childhood and to just your own struggles. And what really resonated with me, there's a lot that we're going to talk about, but your ability to use some of these tools with, to me, it seems a sense of curiosity of like, okay, you met this dude, Sensei Clay, which we'll talk about in some of his tools and tricks that you've learned. But back to just the simple question, I'll share something that I've been using, but also struggling with maybe too. I think by default at a younger age, my hardwiring was just like do, grind and optimize and do these sort of things. and more recently, I'm discovering that ultimately probably comes from a place of fear of not being good enough and default to doing. And this simple question of what does it feel like to be me in this moment, it's still kind of really hard for me to answer. Like I kind of go to I think of the emotion flywheel and be like, okay, is this like excitement? Is this okay, tension in the chest? Like, is that fear, anxiety? What is that? How do you label some of those things? And one of the things that's been helpful is um like when you just mentioned, don't really think about it, feel it. And so I just been going on walks and recording a voice memo to myself. And like immediately when I step outside, it's like, I feel like the wind on my face. I feel the sun beaming down on my body. And I like take a few breaths and that's how that has been the easiest way for me to do it. I'm curious, what have you discovered with your clients or even yourself of people that could do this right versus the people that get stuck?
Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of alphas, right? High performers in business and sports. So a lot of guys, when they come to me, they're thinking more about their physicality when I ask them how it feels to be them right now. It's like, oh, like my body feels good. Like, I don't know, I have some soreness in my shoulder, whatever it may be. And so for them, oftentimes they were coded with the belief that if they feel their feelings or express their feelings, then they're weak, right? Vulnerability makes them weak. And so for them, it's like there's actually just like a piece of code that blocks them from feeling their feelings. This is super common with a lot of guys, high performers, people who push super hard, because there had been times in their life, whether it was through like childhood trauma or just to get to levels that they've gotten to, where they've had to push through the feeling, the governor that said that, hey, this isn't safe. They've had to kind of turn that off in a way to get to where they're at. And so we have to turn that back on so they can actually tap into the emotion again, because that will work to a point and it doesn't, right? So a lot of high achievers I see, for example, I'm helping a really great pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. He's coming back from a Tommy John surgery, and he's a former Cy Young Award winner. And this guy came so far just being able to, in many ways, turn it off. And that got him to a place of achieving a lot, but it also got him to not listen to what his body was saying to him, and led to him just outsourcing how much he should use his arm in pitching to coaches, people who weren't him, right? People who weren't actually experiencing what it's like to be him at that moment. And that led to him having to get surgery. And so we've had to really recode his mind to constantly be okay with knowing it's safe and it's going to make him stronger to feel his feelings. So as he goes through his rehab process, he doesn't re-injure himself. He can actually be aware and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to need another 5 to 7 days before I make my next start, because something's flaring up here. It doesn't feel right. And I can feel that. And through that, he'll be able to actually have a more sustained career. So, yeah, that's a big block for a lot of guys, is being vulnerable makes them weak. So that's like literally the first piece of code I have to reprogram with a lot of my clients that come in and do a session with me. And the first session is like, okay, it's safe to feel my feelings. Being vulnerable actually makes me strong. And then being able to slow people down enough and, like you said, get them out of their head so they can actually feel their feelings. And that's really about just creating a safe space, right? Me creating a container for them to know that, hey, like, you're not performing here. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want you to go into your inner world. And, there's meditation techniques to get people comfortable enough to actually slow down enough to observe what those emotions are. And it's also a muscle. The more awareness you bring to this, the more times you ask this question, the better you get at it. It might be like, oh, I don't know, I think I might feel anxious. And then maybe over time, it's like, it becomes more refined. It's like, oh, this is a nervous excitement, or, you know what, I'm actually really afraid of this thing. So the more awareness you have through asking this question, the better you get at being able to tap in.
Yeah, and we're going to jump in between strategy and tactics. And these are two words that I have previously never really thought the difference between, but it's come up like 3 or 4 different times this week in different areas of my life. And I'm realizing, oh yeah, my brain kind of defaults to the tactics first, but it's really powerful to zoom out and say like, what is the overall strategy here?
Mm.
What am I trying to do? And then the tactics can look, a variety of ways. And so one of the tactics that you provide too, just to get sort of tactical, is, which I thought was really helpful, is just on your phone, you set 5 alarms, and to just check in, ask yourself that question: how do you feel in this moment? But there's other ways to do it too, which is what part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because you've seen a lot of the ways. And diving back into your story specifically, going back to, you played football in college, and I think that is when you were introduced to, or you found Sensei Clay. Like, who is this guy, and can you talk a little bit about your transformation during this period?
Yeah. When I was 18 years old, you're supposed to leave high school, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that you're supposed to kind of know what you want to do, more or less. Like, pick a major, it's going to take you down a career path. For me, like, I don't know, what do I want to do? I want to play more football. That was the most fun thing I did in high school. Like, school wasn't fun. Like, the most fun thing I did was hang out with my friends and play football. So the only logical step was, I'll go to college and I'll play football. And I was lucky enough to go with one of my good friends from high school to the same college to go play. So it was like win-win. I get the bros, I get football. I was excited about it. And by the time I got there, I had a rude awakening, because I did not play well. I ended up riding the bench the whole year and had to go to all the practices, do all the stuff that's hard and not that fun, and didn't get to do the fun thing, which is playing the games. So by the time the season ended, I was looking for solutions. I had gone through a little ego death. Like, you're in high school, you're the man, you're playing really well. Then you go to college and you're like not playing, and that identity really gets shaken. And so I was looking for solutions. I was already pretty dialed with workouts, nutrition. Probably could have been more dialed with maybe watching film, studying the game of football more, but it wasn't even in my awareness at the time. I was looking for things that are really physical. So when I went back home in the off season, I went to a local supplement shop, and at that time, you could pretty much get steroids in like a supplement shop. They're called pro hormones. So I was just looking for the next one that they haven't banned yet. I was like, give me the good stuff. the owner of the supplement shop just happened to be this really quirky, funny dude, and his name was Sensei Clay. And when I started asking about like pro hormones and stuff, he started just turning the questions back on me and just being like, well, what are you doing to get better? And I was like, oh, I'm doing these workouts and doing this nutrition stuff. And he just started asking me, well, okay, well, what are you doing for like the mental, or like, he started talking about all this stuff I didn't understand, like energy training and all these modalities that I would soon learn all about. But at the time I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like a really rational kid. I was an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. But I was also curious. And so he gave me an exercise to do when I was in that shop. And he said, hey, I want you to look out the window, and I want you to look off to the peripheries of your eyes, and just be aware of the cars passing by in the street, but look off into the peripheries. And I started breathing in deeply through my nose as he instructed me, doing this. And that was the first time in my life where I really felt life slow down, and I felt a sense of ease and peace, and realized like, oh, I have crazy anxiety. And I didn't even know what to call it at the time. All I knew was that when I looked off into the peripheries of my eyes, which is the mindfulness exercise, and I started to breathe more deeply through my nose, I started to be present. And if you're present, you're not anxious, right? If you're fully present, you're not going to be anxious. It's just, you can't be anxious and present at the same time. If you're fully there, just boom, 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 right in it, unless there's like something actually trying to hurt you or attack you in the moment, right? And usually there isn't. Usually the things that make us anxious are our imagination, the things that we're worried about happening in the future, which was the cycle that I would constantly live in. Always be worried about not being enough, some bad thing happening that was in my imagination. So when I did the exercise and I was present, well, everything was fine. And that took me down a rabbit hole of wanting to learn more about these types of techniques. He started just teaching me how to use my brain and being able to shift my brainwave states through different meditation techniques. Started teaching me about the energy systems in the body, chakras, meridians, how to work with energy, different breathing techniques. And yeah, long story short, I went back the next season. I became a starter on the team. I was dominant. I was one of our best players. Not only that, I had my own success, but my teammates were really interested in the stuff I was doing. So I was using these techniques as healing modalities to help my teammates and help them recover physically, help them improve mentally. And that's where I realized I really had a gift for healing. And yes, I had a lot of success with football, but what actually came easiest to me for the first time in my life was like the gift of being able to heal people and to enhance other people's performance. And that feedback loop of being able to support others was the most fulfilling things I had ever experienced. And that really set me down this path of wanting to do this for a living.
Yeah, and you talk about this through the lens of power over effort, and you discovering this, and I think you like tested this out on like your uncle or something. He was having back pain, and then like your teammates in the locker room, maybe your own injuries that you were like literally healing yourself, but then also some like visualization and or breath work combination for you to PR on the bench press and things like that. Can you share just like a few tactical examples of like what it is and what's like actually going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of what we experience in life is just comes down to what we believe is possible, what we believe we can do, And so mental rehearsal within our own minds, just shaping our perception, goes a long way to determining how we're going to actually behave in the physical material world and what we're going to attract to us. And so, yeah, a few of those examples were I learned that I could actually put energy into people's meridians and chakras and take away their pain. And that was like a gift I had for healing. And yeah, that was really interesting. I had the first time I learned this technique, I didn't really have any blockages mentally. I just was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to do this? Sure. I was just open. I was curious. So we had a family friend or it was like one of those distant relatives. I think he was like a second cousin or my dad's cousin. And he just said he had this chronic back pain. And I was like, oh, let me see if I can fix that for you. So I just shot some energy up his governing meridian, which runs along your back, your spine. And yeah, within a few moments, I took away all of his pain. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, I like believed it would work, but then I was also very surprised when he actually had his pain disappear. And then that's what I did for all my teammates throughout the season. They would come to me, and my athletic trainer like named me the guru because my teammates would come to me in the locker room before the game in the athletic room, and they would ask me to take their pain away if they're different injuries. And I guess it worked because, before every practice and games, I have a line of guys who want to receive my medicine. And so that really opened my mind, expanded my mind. So there was more that was going on, even if I didn't fully understand it at the time. And then so you could use this energy to heal. You could also use it to become stronger and to act out in the world in a more yang, powerful, doing way. And so I used it for bench press as well. So I actually broke my arm in I think the off season after that, and I healed myself using these energy techniques. And within 3 weeks of breaking the arm, I was repping out 315 pounds like 8 times on the bench press and was completely healed, and was also like hitting PRs. And it was just because I was using these techniques I learned, these energy techniques, which do incorporate different breathing, incorporates using similar to Qigong, if anyone's some familiar with that, a version of Qigong, and plugging energy into the chakras and meridians to power myself up. And then all this stuff ended up being backed up by research. I ended up doing my senior project looking at these different types of visualization techniques. They weren't using the energy techniques like I was, but they were still finding by just visualization alone, like you could improve strength performance and a number of different exercises. Like literally, there's one study where they looked at 3 groups of people who were doing bicep curls. One group was doing the bicep curl just in their mind, just visualizing bicep curls. The second group was doing bicep curls, just the physical practice. And the third group was doing visual practice and the actual physical practice. And so, as you can imagine, the group that was doing the physical and the visual practice far outperformed both the other groups. But the group that was doing the visualization performed just as well as the group that was doing the physical practice. And there's a lot of studies out there like that. So it's like, well, what's going on here, right? Because your belief creates your reality. And so there was actually, when you go through this visualization, the body was perceiving that it was actually doing the work. And so the muscles were firing. And so that's why strength was actually gained just through the work that was doing within the mind. And so I did my senior project looking at a number of these different research studies, because for me, I was still a meathead. I was 21 years old. That was like the coolest thing for me. I was like, this is crazy. You can actually just get stronger through these mental techniques. I was like, why don't people talk about this? My football coaches weren't talking about this. The strength and conditioning coaches weren't talking about this. For me, it was like, this is like the best kept secret. And so I used it for myself, told my teammates about it, tried to use as much as I could. And I've just been on a path ever since of giving people these tools to use in a real actionable way. Because for me, it's like common sense. It's like, if you're going to be competing at a high level in sports and business and any type of artistic performance, like, why not use these tools that have been proven to accelerate and enhance performance? A lot of people don't. And I guess there's nerds like me that are really into this stuff, and we help people use them who are curious about it.
You have this testimonials page. I think it's like a separate, it's on your website, as well as like you have a separate Instagram for it. And it is just all these professional athletes, UFC fighters, boxers, race car drivers, golfers, some founder entrepreneurs, I think some NFL players, just saying how much you have helped them. And you watch one, maybe it's like, oh, maybe that's a random thing, but you have dozens of these, and it's very clear that your methods and modalities work. And so if I was hearing or watching this for the first time, I'd be like, wait a minute, so you're saying that just me imagining that I'm doing a bicep curl is going to give me the same or better result than actually doing the bicep curl? That's crazy. But what you're saying is, not only have you seen that to be the case, you have these different exercises or examples of people actually doing this. And maybe it goes back to what you said originally, is it's not going to work if you don't believe it. And so figuring out these smallest units of evidence for yourself, for you, maybe it was Sensei Clay, and then that distant cousin of you, and then your friends in the locker room, and then yourself. What are some onboarding ramps for people to kind of play around with this? You mentioned Qigong, and any other examples or resources that you would point people towards?
Yeah, well, as you see in the book, I give this whole playbook and how to onboard people onto this. It starts with awareness, so we talked about, right? Awareness of what your experience is right now, and then awareness of like, what would you like it to be? And so once you start going through the awareness of just being aware of what it feels like to be you right now, then you're not unconsciously just going through life anymore. You're actually going to make a choice of like, okay, what if I could choose my experience of life? Most people are just like, whatever, next thing in front of me, let's keep going. Whatever I basically am picking up from society or from like my upbringing or my parents telling me like, this is what I should do, or this is the next step. Like, sure, let's just do that. Right. And then there's people who awaken. They're actually getting to this place of awareness of like, actually, that doesn't make me feel good. This job that I thought would be the right thing to do is actually not fulfilling me, or this relationship I'm in, like, this isn't making me happy, or the way we're relating is not, bringing me peace. And once you get to that place of awareness, understand just how we've all been wired. We've all been programmed in many ways to fail. 80% of people's thoughts on average are negative. That's just how we're wired for survival, right? We're trying to look around and avoid the pain as much as we can, and we're always looking out for it. And then 95% of our thoughts are on repeat every day. So we're living in these same cycles over and over and over again. And so you're not really going to experience anything different unless you become aware enough to choose something different. And so once you come to this place of awareness, understanding, as simple as it is, what you focus on is what you get. And so when you focus on what you want, you're going to get more of what you want. When you focus on what you don't want, you get more of what you don't want. And so starting to take ownership over your focus, because, this breath work is becoming a really popular modality in wellness right now. And so a lot of breathwork teachers say, yeah, well, you'll breathe automatically, but you could also bring intention to your breath, and it's going to change the way you feel. And you can breathe with intention, make it automatic, or it could be something that you're doing with intention. And your focus is the same way. Like you could just automatically go through life and just have an unconscious focus that kind of just whatever's coming at you is coming at you and you're just experiencing it as the world comes at you. Or you can choose your focus with intention. And so that next step after we talked about doing the alarms, the awareness of how does it feel to be you, is asking yourself, well, what was I focused on right before that feeling emerged? And then you can start to awaken to how different environments, how different ways that you point your focus contribute to how you're feeling and what those loops look like. And you can start to choose your focus and more intention as time goes by. You can go, you know what? Here's the situation I'm in right now. I could choose to feel anxiety about it, or I could choose to feel gratitude. You know, what am I focusing on in this situation that's going to determine how I feel? Right. And someone could, you could be in your car and it's a beater, right? And you're like, you could be focused on, my car is not as cool as the car that's next to me on the road. And you could feel like, sad or bad about yourself. Or you could focus on, well, this is great. I have a car because I can get from A to B. I can create more possibilities for myself. And you feel gratitude. So both of those are going to be available for you at all times. But that's a basic onboarding, is understanding that you can choose your focus. And by choosing your focus, that's how you take back your power.
It's reminding me of this concept that has been top of mind for me recently. I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Hudson or any of his material, but he's an executive coach, I think, to a lot of people in the at OpenAI and Sam Altman and a handful of others in the Bay Area. And he has a podcast and course that's like very insightful. He talks about this thing called the golden algorithm, where there's 3 steps to it. It's one, essentially it's like the emotion that we're trying to avoid feeling ends up being the one that we invite in the most. And it's like step 1 is, what is the emotion that you're trying to avoid? For me, I think it's like inadequacy or not being good enough. Step 2 is, how do you avoid it? And step 3 is, how does that strategy actually bring in that more of that emotion? So me trying to avoid that inadequacy might be things like just defaulting to doing just a bunch of saying yes to maybe smaller things to stay productive. And then how does that bring in more of it? Well, I might work on smaller things that aren't necessarily aligned to these bigger things that I have, or more personal projects versus just more work stuff. And so the same emotion presents itself, and I'm seeing this just in a different way now through your lens, is what you're talking about is, if you're driving that car and you're only looking at what you don't have, or if you're only looking at it through one lens, of course you're not going to get a different result. And in what's also maybe inspiring or invoking a lot of like excitement or curiosity is how quickly this could happen. I think in your book you talked about working with Sensei Clay and just doing simple visualization and breathing exercises. I think you immediately gained it was like 6 inches on your vertical.
Mm-hmm.
Is that,
yeah?
Am I making that up?
No, that's right. Yeah, it can happen very quickly. I mean, miracles happen all the time for me and my clients, and it's really just a byproduct of the thoughts and images you're holding in your mind, because we're on this feedback loop, right? The reason why your reality looks mostly the same every day is because you have 95% of the same thoughts. So you're just getting what you focus on. You're literally creating your reality every single day through those thoughts and images you hold in your mind. That's your communication with the universe, with God. It's like, yeah, this is what I expect. This is what I get. But miracles happen when you just put yourself into alignment with expecting something different. And that expectation, of course, comes from the subconscious belief. And the belief is the code that programs our computer. It is that simple. Like, that is the magic. And so you talked about, this technique that this executive coach talked about, where when you have an emotion and you're resisting it, then you end up getting more of it. And that's like a Zen proverb, right? It's what you resist persists. And what do you do with that emotion, right? So you go into it, you allow it in, you accept it, and then you ask yourself the question, what is the piece of code that's actually creating this feeling, right? This is how we actually make this stop happening. This is how we change that 95% of the same thoughts. We create new thoughts by changing the underlying code. So, Mitchell, if we were having a session, I would ask you, okay, this feeling of inadequacy that's coming up for you, like in this specific situation, as these emotions come up, I want you to feel into them. I want you to accept them, not try to resist them. Accept them as, yeah, I am this thing. I am inadequate. I'm not enough. Feel it, feel it, feel it. And I want you to ask yourself, yeah, what am I believing to be true right now in this situation I'm in that make me feel that way? And it could be something as simple like, when we get right down to it, might be, whoa, I believe that if I'm not working at least 6 hours a day, I'm not going to achieve my goals and be successful, right? And maybe because you only have 5 hours of work to do that day, those feelings of inadequacy are coming up because you've been programmed to believe that there's a threshold for the amount of time that needs to be worked for you to be successful. And so the anxiety that comes up, the not enoughness, comes from, I'm not hitting that threshold. And so we would actually just get to that piece of code. We'd have you accept your way through it using these types of breathing techniques, the same ones that I actually use to increase my vert by 6 inches. These types of breathing techniques that we use to visualize yourself fully accepting and processing in your body that it's true. It is true. When I don't work 6 hours a day, like, I'm not going to be successful, and whatever negative events could lead from that, right? I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to get the girl that I want. I'm not going to make the money I want. I'm not going to be loved. I'm going to be alone. However far you want to take it. You accept your way through that altogether. And then once we do that, we can actually change it, and we can make sure that emotion doesn't come back again because we just transmute it to the opposite. And the opposite belief is, oh, I believe that regardless of how much I'm working, I know I'm going to be successful. And then what happens when you transmute that in that way and you rewrite that code is your body can go to a place of, number one, rest and relaxation. So we solve for the feeling. And we know that it's not the things, it's not the things that make us feel that way. We actually get to the feeling and then the things show up for us. And so we're creating the feeling that's going to lead to us getting what we want. Because from that relaxed state, from that place of seeing the possibilities, of actually knowing that you could be massively successful working however much you want to work every day, you're going to see the pathway forward. It's going to open up doors in your subconscious mind that you can walk in and through. They're going to show you how to actually do that and create those results. And so a lot of times we're like, oh, I can't wait till I get that thing so I can feel that way. But it's actually the opposite. You want to feel that way, and that will lead to you getting that thing.
Yeah, in the book, you have a part on this that really stood out. You talk about, like, in every achievement, we, like, what we're chasing is that actual feeling, not the achievement. And so some of the examples, I think, just for people and myself, I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. We think about, you mentioned the physical things or these possessions, but we really want the feelings that they bring behind them. And sometimes our hypotheses aren't true. And so, like, for, we say that we want the money, but we really want the feeling of security or safety or freedom. Or if it's like career, you really want the purpose or contribution or maybe just confidence. If it's physical health, you want the strength or the energy or power. If it's relationships, it's love, connection, etc. And what I'm observing here is that by connecting with the feeling now, before, you could be like, almost audit, is that the actual feeling that I want to have? How can I experience that feeling now and then get the thing after?
Yeah. And this comes back to, like, why do you want to ask the question, how's it feel to me right now? Well, that question allows you to uncover the code that's creating the resistance between you and what you want to have. Because if you're working hard towards something and you keep on getting blocked and you keep on, like, oh, why do I keep sabotaging every relationship? Or why my business is not working out? Or why can't I hit that certain financial outcome for myself? You want to feel the feelings that come up in your resistance towards these outcomes. And as you feel into that resistance, and you feel those emotions, that in the present moment, that is where you actually uncover the code that's holding you back from getting those things. right? Because what you'll notice is, in a past life, I helped a lot of people go through physical transformations. I built a large wellness company on the internet, and I got to see so many people go through physical transformations. And I also got to see how many people held them back and then were able to break through the code that was holding them back from creating those physical transformations, right? Because I would take someone, maybe they're 100 pounds overweight, and they just could not be consistent with their workouts or their nutrition. And I take them into their body to feel into what was coming up for them. And they thought about doing it. And it was fear, fear, fear. Okay, fear. What are you afraid of? Oh, I believe that if I start to take time away from my family and put it towards working out or my own wellness and nutrition and so forth, then they're going to leave me. And so for that person, there's a lot more pain there on the other side of working out than there is from staying where they are and being 100 pounds overweight. So they'll stay stuck right where they are. But as soon as they believe that working out is going to bring them closer to their family, boom, that they're going to feel that inner inspiration. They're going to see the possibilities. They're going to start to take action, not because they're getting new information, but it's because there's like inner drive that's pulling them towards what they want, instead of feeling like they have to push themselves through that fear that just continues to cycle through automatically without them ever choosing.
What have you learned about epigenetics and generational trauma?
Man, at this point, I truly believe that damn near every physical disorder that we have is just a byproduct of like our stress that we're going through, because we all have our genetic predispositions, right? You probably have people in your family who have had cancer or heart disease or whatever it may be. Why don't you get it automatically, right? Why don't you have cancer, heart disease, whatever it may be? It's not just about predisposed. I think they've proven now that 99% of it is just environmental. And so, yeah, we can say it could be your nutrition. We can say it could be, whatever pharmaceuticals you might be exposed to or toxins. All those things definitely play a role. My experience has been the thing that plays the greatest role is your mind, your thoughts, the images you hold in mind, your stress. I've just seen this play out so many times for myself and other people, how you can literally make yourself sick. You can turn on your genes for cancer or all types of ailments just by believing things that make you stay in a chronic state of stress, sadness, fear, anger. I've had so many like family members who it's like they've gotten cancer, and then you look up the underlying spiritual and emotional connection that could create that type of cancer, because there's like new German medicine, if you look into a lot of Eastern medicine, they connect all those emotions to different types of physical ailments. You go back, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Always. And so I've helped a lot of clients through this. I do a lot of physical healing work with my clients that come to me with diseases, mental health disorders, depression, anxiety, autoimmune conditions, and physical injuries, for athletes. And we're able to heal those things so quickly by just going in and handling the underlying subconscious code that's creating this. And this might sound crazy. Someone, it's like, what do you mean you can think your way into being healthy? In many ways, you can. In many ways, it really is. And it's not necessarily thinking. It's not just the thoughts, but it's getting yourself into alignment and to being able to create a space for your body to be healthy, which means that you feel relaxed, you feel peaceful, you feel love, you feel fulfilled, you feel all the emotions that create a healthy body. And that is a body that is going to recover well. It's a body that's going to repair itself. It's a body that can be in a state of equilibrium and homeostasis. And so this is huge. And, when we talk about generational trauma, it could be, hey, my parents had heart disease, and so of course I'm going to get diabetes. It could also be different negative belief systems that have been passed along from generation to generation that you just adopt. That's generational trauma too, and that can have physical results. It could have, results that correlate with your financial struggles. I remember my dad always had a saying, nothing comes easy to us, into like our lineage. He said nothing comes easy to the Epsteins, which is like, it's our last name. And so that belief created so much just stuckness and resistance to move through before I changed it. And he definitely had to struggle through that through his life. And that was like a really obvious one. It's like a piece of code that just says like, yeah, you're gonna have to struggle through everything, right? And I think we can all think about our families, and there may be one piece of code or another relating to finances or career or relationships that we know that the whole family's stuck on this loop. And yeah, you have to be the one who breaks those generational curses by changing the underlying code.
Yeah, what was it in the book? You talked about some of the like Jewish ancestors perhaps and maybe struggle around even just being themselves or maybe around money too.
Yeah.
What was that exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about all my Jewish family members, for the most part, they're like very anxious people, and I think anyone who knows like Jews in general, like they're anxious people, right? And there's this underlying like fear of there won't be enough, which is I think also why there's been like, all the stereotypes around like, the Jews like hiding their gold and their shekels and their money. And I think there is a grain of truth in that, because there is a lot of fear around there won't be enough, or this isn't safe, or we need to be prepared for something bad to happen. And it makes sense when you look at how like the Jews have been persecuted for thousands and thousands of years. They're always having to like move to a new place. There's always like, a new coup against them. And so they're constantly like moving around, and that stuff gets passed along over and over and over again. And even like the generation that we're in, like I see it with like the Jewish family members I have. And I guess I'm the black sheep because I've recoded myself in all those ways. So I don't have to live in that anxiety anymore. But for me, it's like really obvious to see it in them and a lot of others. And so, yeah, a lot of stereotypes are true. And that's like literally us seeing the generational trauma. And like, I'm sure, we could definitely get canceled by bringing up every single like Jews or black people or Latinos or Asians. Like there's a grain of truth in all the stereotypes, and some people transcend them. Doesn't apply to everyone, but for groups of people as a whole, yeah, there's a lot of generational trauma that gets passed along over and over and over again that keeps those people stuck in different ways.
Yeah, that example resonated with me too. I was like, oh yeah, maybe that shows up in my life or heritage too, or even kind of remember, growing up Jewish, it was always a little bit of a thing that kind of kept. Um, I just felt I was aware that it was different from other people. Nowadays, I think it's kind of cool, but I certainly didn't used to think that. And you see, like you're talking about some of these broader stereotypes, and you maybe get curious of like, oh yeah, maybe there is something there if that is somehow deeply rooted in some of this epigenetic stuff, which again, and I think I don't know the research personally, but I know that there is a lot of research that supports this, and I think it's just an interesting kind of rabbit hole to go down. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that in the book. The other thing I wanted to touch on real briefly before we wrap. Any dope athlete stories? You work with a lot of cool people. Any ones that you've come across and you're like, dang, this is cool that this is my job, or any anecdotes that have been helpful for you or others?
Yeah. Well, one that just has a lot of synchronicity is pretty cool is I was working with this professional boxer, and he was like living the real Creed story. So if anyone has seen the Creed movies, like the Rocky sequels, he was literally living the Creed story. Like his dad was a Hall of Fame boxer, and nobody wanted him to box, just like in Creed. Um, he kind of had to scrap for everything on his own. Although everyone thought like things were given to him, he was like sleeping on couches and like just hustling to get by. Whereas like the world just thought he was probably rich because of his dad. And really, he was like not encouraged to fight it all, and he had to grind for everything on his own. And I've been working with this guy for years, and so this one story comes together where him and I got together, and in this one fight camp, he was a big underdog. He was supposed to lose this fight, and the funniest thing was like it was like his real comeback story, where we had moved through so many pieces of subconscious code that had held him back and made him feel like he wasn't enough, that, you know, he shouldn't even try to live up or try to box because of the lineage that his father has set already. And just like this impossible standard that was set. And we moved through so much of that trauma and got him to this place where he was fighting this guy. He was the co-main event. I think it was at the Alamo Dome. I believe that was the place. It's in San Antonio. And it was a big fight. And the guy who was fighting was actually the actor who fought Michael B. Jordan in the movie Creed, which is crazy because we were like talking about how he's very much living that story. So he's literally fighting the actor who Creed had to fight in the movie. Not only that, but the cut man, so the guy who puts like ice in your face, was the same cut man they used for the movie for Michael B. Jordan. So like the guy who was like working in his corner and just, you know, putting Vaseline on his face, literally the same guy from the movie. And yeah, he went out there and just dominated, and you know, many cards won that fight by a shutout. And that was like this, you know, there's a lot of little synchronicities that happened during that fight camp as well, and all the way through the end of the fight. But it was like him beating that guy, like the actor from, he's a real professional boxer, but they just used him for the movie as the actor, and to win as an underdog and literally play out that Creed story in real life was like a kind of pinch yourself moment where it's like, whoa, like something, you know, something greater than ourselves come together to bring this moment here. And so that was a really special one for us.
That's really cool, man. One of the things that I couldn't help but notice with your story and knowing you a little bit as well, of this concept of who, not how, which every time I revisit this, I'm like, man, that's such a powerful concept. And the idea is by default, we kind of try to figure out these things by ourselves. Like, oh, how do I do that? And a much easier approach is often not to think how and just think who could help me do this, or who has already done this before. And for you, what the lesson I'm taking is sometimes it's not as simple as that, and you just kind of follow your curiosity and you stumble into these who's. And so it seems that you have done that through getting curious about your own journey back in the day, meeting Sensei Clay. And I think you kind of formally asked him to mentor you back then. And then that led you to doing it with other people. And then later, I think you met Dan and did the fitness jumper rope dudes thing. In maybe some ways, he was a who with you. You went to Columbia. There was this Hawaii tech entrepreneur at some point in your story. And then I don't know if it was Nat or who it was, but like an SEO person that helped you blow up the YouTube channel. And then you got into boxing, and you were just into boxing, but you'd go to the gym yourself. You met some of the boxers there. Then your business has exploded through word of mouth, you know, more who's. How do you think about that, and what would be like a lesson that somebody could take away studying your story?
Yeah, you know, something that's going to sound like very woo-woo to a lot of people, but I've just seen it just produce such incredible results, is just really being able to picture the images with clarity in your mind of what you want to create, and just planting those seeds every single day. Like when you wake up, like plant the seeds and literally feel it as if it's present, not something you are creating, but something you're already in, of like, what are you living now? Just feel it as if it's now, see it, experience it fully through all the senses. Do the same thing before you go to sleep every night. Plant those seeds of what you want to create, see it with clarity so your subconscious mind can come up with the ideas for you and kind of digest that while you sleep. Because those who's, for me, honestly, like they've never really shown up through any like deliberate action. Like, oh, I'm going to go get this person, I'm going to get this client. That's never worked for me, ever. Because like I've always wanted to work in professional sports, but there was never like an opportunity for me just like, oh, let me go get this person. No, like it literally has come through like my vision and staying in the emotional frequency, right? Those emotions of feeling like I already have these clients. And then I get referrals, or they just show up, like random, like, so a lot of times how they come up, like I got connected to a guy in the Miami Dolphins because my wife went to a workout class with one of the girlfriends from one of the players, and then he wanted to work with me, but then he passed me off to another teammate who wasn't even looking for anyone, who was just curious. I ended up working with him. He became a client of mine. And it's like those things happen all the time for me, and I can't replicate it, right? And maybe I'm in a very unique profession because I'm working in this world of manifestation, of creation, of using your mind, body, and spirit to align with what you want. But that seems to be the only way I get clients, because you mentioned briefly, I created a YouTube channel in this whole fitness business through a lot of deliberate action. I was like, put out these YouTube videos, it grew the channel over 1 million subscribers, $1 million business. Like, all that was deliberate action, and all these specific things I did to create results. This business I've created is just coming, like, there's no like, do this, and this. It's very much like, stay in the emotional frequency of, I have all these clients, I've created these outcomes, keep showing up, right? Keep taking the opportunities, keep following my inspiration in the present moment. But it all seems to come to me. I don't really go and get it or make it happen. And so that's how this is working. Maybe it's in alignment with this, but I think that's power, right? Power is being able to get into that emotional frequency of what it is you want, and just noticing how it's going to come to you through that emotional frequency, not through forcing things.
The same exact way, none of this stuff works if you don't actually think it's going to work. The who's don't work if it's just transactional, obviously. And so the lesson, I think, that I've experienced countless times in my own life is lives a layer deeper in following that interest and entry, and almost the compulsion, I think, for me, of, I'm not overthinking it. I was just like, oh, this just sounds dope. Kind of, I think what we are doing right now is a good example in my life of having more of these conversations. You and I just kind of caught up a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about your book. I absorbed your book. It was amazing. And I think, small note on that too, that I think is just kind of funny or serendipitous maybe, of when you first put out that book, I saw, the title is Programmed to Fail. And there's something maybe about it, I don't know, I just didn't really resonate with it a ton. And some of the content was like, hey, like, if you're smoking weed, you're a loser, blah, blah, blah. And like, for whatever reason, that framing didn't really resonate with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more I think I saw some of your other things, and then we reconnected, and then you told me, oh yeah, you maybe picked not the best title for what it actually is. You renamed the book to The Success Code, right?
Yeah.
And have relaunched it, and so I just think that's, and like I said, it is a really, really good book, and it's just kind of interesting or funny of like, maybe the Program to Fail title was Programmed to Fail. I don't think that the book actually failed. It did great, but yeah, why'd you rename it?
Yeah, literally a transmutation, right? It's very metaphorical, because like, this is what I do all day with my clients. I'm literally transmuting their beliefs. Like, if I had a superpower, which I do, it's my ability to transmute people's subconscious beliefs. And it seemed like maybe a part of me deep down wanted that book to fail, wasn't ready for it to be a success, right? And so maybe that's where the title come from, and I had people who were kind of coaching me through the process. I worked with a company to do it, and they said it was fine. So I was like, all right, well, I guess it's fine. And so I actually uncovered, I was running some ads to the book just out of curiosity of like, what kind of people would buy this book? And I was getting their phone numbers or emails, and I was reaching out to them, and I was like, damn, everyone who's buying this book's been programmed to fail. Doesn't make sense. Like, you know, they're like all going through tough times, you know, and like none of them could afford to work with me one to one when I actually got on the phone with them. And so it gave me this aha moment. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. The people who are already successful to a degree, who I want to work with, they're going to be more attracted to something that is like, oh, yeah, I want more success, right? I want the success code. I'm already successful. I want more success now. Because, like I talk about in the intro of the book, is like anyone who's going to take action on stuff in my book, they've already been successful in at least one area of their life, right? They maybe have incredible relationships. Maybe they have six-pack abs. Maybe they've made a ton of money. Maybe they've had career success. The book is about really teaching you how to apply the area where you're good already to the rest of your life, and really understanding that, like, look, you've been programmed to succeed in this area, and that's why it seems to almost come easy for you. Now we can do this for all the other areas of your life. And so, like you said, the inside of the book makes that very clear, but the outside of it, I think, was pushing away a lot of high achievers and successful people like yourself, who were like, no, I don't program to fail. I'm not programmed to fail. You're like, I want more success. I want more of what's already going well. And so that was the aha moment for me. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on here so I can tell the world, because I actually put a lot of energy into launching the first book, Program to Fail, which is now not available anymore. And so the new version of the book is Success Code, and we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully, at least one person will pick it up after watching this interview.
Yeah, and where can people check you out, and where can people check out that book? And again, I do think that it's going to be one of these books that's highly recommended and thought after, just because the way that you put so much of yourself into it. I'm talking like right out of the gate. Like, we'll read the first chapter and you're gonna be like, whoa. And then you start to just kind of sit with it and see parallels into your own life, or at least that certainly has been my experience. So definitely check it out. And where can people check you out?
Yeah. So the book's on Amazon. They can search for it, the Success Code, and then my name, Brandon Epstein, is the author. They'll be able to find it, because I imagine there's probably more than one book called The Success Code. So definitely put my name as the author and you'll find it. And then I have a website, thebrandonepstein.com, and you'll find all the resources there for the stuff I do. Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching. I run groups. I do retreats, all kinds of fun stuff.
Nice. Brandon, any final message or challenge or takeaway that you want to leave the listener with here to implement some of this stuff maybe in their own life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like some of these conversations, like the one we're having right now, can be scoffed at. And, you know, people can say, oh, easy for you to say, like, no, you just got lucky. And I'm just telling you guys, like, I worked with so many professional athletes and successful business people that, like, this isn't just woo woo stuff. People who are successful with this stuff, some of them are doing it automatically. They were programmed to do this the right way. And then maybe they come to me for other things, right? Maybe they're having trouble with their relationships and they were programmed poorly around those, but they've been programmed really well. You know, like I've worked with multiple professional athletes, boxing, professional baseball, where like they're juniors. So like their parents were in professional sports, and so they were programmed with the belief that they could do it. So there they are. They made it because they were programmed with it. But they were programmed with it. And so just understand that, like, if you are struggling in your life right now in a certain area, like, it really is just a coding issue. And so you need to uncover are the broken pieces of code that are causing you to stay in the cycle and not move forward. It's not a more effort thing, because if you just try to put more effort with the same code, you're going to keep on getting the same result in different ways. You're going to find new ways to sabotage yourself. So really take the time and uncover what that code is. And, you know, a great place to start is by also looking at where you're finding success in your life and being like, okay, how am I programmed to succeed here? And where's the disconnect between the other areas of my life where I'm not finding success? And maybe you'll even just see, you'll be like, okay, in this area of my life, right? Maybe you have six-pack abs. You're like, well, I'm really diligent with my habits, my exercise, my nutrition. I'm on it, my diet plan. And then you look at your career and you're like, oh, I'm very inconsistent. Look at this. I follow the same program. I just do one thing. I keep it very simple with my nutrition, and look, I get results. And then you look at your career and you're like, oh, I'm starting like a new business or a different job like every year or two. Maybe that's why I'm not getting results, because I'm not staying as consistent like I need to. And then you can find what are the broken pieces of code that make you kind of go schizo and sabotage yourself before you have enough time to see success. So look at the underlying code that's driving the lack of success, and you're going to be able to rewire yourself to get the success you want.
Amazing. Brandon, thank you for coming on the show. Everyone check him out. Grab the success code. Brandon, you the man. Appreciate you, homie.
Appreciate you, big dog.